Hey folks, it's your main man E here, and I wanted to do a video today to talk about harnesses. A lot of times we get dogs in here, they're chasing after cats in the house, maybe they're putting the brakes on when you're walking with them. Perhaps they're jumping on people, they're getting so excited they're jumping up and they're biting clothing. Maybe they're even lunging and doing scary stuff, and a lot of time when the dog comes in here and they're doing that type of behavior, they have a harness on. And the owner, explains to us that they have tried to stop the dog from doing this behavior. And so we ask them, how did you try to stop the dog? And they say, well, when the dog's on the harness, I pulled back on the harness. I pulled backwards. And what you'll notice here with this young dog is when I pull backwards, we've been training him, but you can see here, he keeps looking forward. He doesn't necessarily turn back because the way the harness is pulling, guys, it's behind his shoulder blades. So the harness isn't really pulling him to turn towards me and change directions. The harness is kind of like as if you tied something to my waist, like a rope, and you tried to pull me around by my waist, I might want to brace myself. And if you pulled me that way, I might kind of stand like this because I don't want to get pulled over. Or maybe if you're trying to pull me that way, I kind of pull back because I'm going to get pulled off balance. If you were to grab me by the wrist and guide me, I might understand what direction you're taking me in. So I want to be clear, folks, like the harness should never be used to try to stop unwanted behaviors by tugging on the harness. More than likely, that's actually going to make the dog try harder. And it's going to create a little bit of a response from them where they pull and then you pull back and then they pull and you pull back, and it creates this kind of reinforcement schedule of, I pull and then something happens. I pull and something happens, and it makes me want to pull harder. So how do we use the harness, or what's the point of the harness, and how would I use the harness? Because people are going to go, Eric, but I got to take the dog out. Well, watch me. Like if I have him and I don't want him to get to something, I'd be more likely to just step on the leash. Like let's say, for example, he wants to get these kibs, and I just step on the leash and I don't say anything to him at all. Now, assuming the kibble's not moving and I haven't taken him to some place where the distractions are really, really high, eventually he's just going to stop and realize he can't get to the kibble. The harness is just stopping him from doing that. If he was to turn back to me, yes, give him some food. But I'm not doing that with the harness. I'm doing that by calling his name and getting him to look at me. Yes, or I'm doing that with food. So one way to think about it is like your harness can be used to physically stop the dog, like to just be like, no, man, there's a leash. You can't go into the street. It's not possible. And yes, it can be done in a way where you're not going to hurt the dog's throat, which is very important. Okay? But the moment that the dog is basically doing unwanted behaviors and the dog is doing bad behaviors, I have to accept I'm past the utility of the harness in order to help me stop that behavior. No, I now have to realize, hey, the dog's doing this behavior. I either need to work on this when the dog doesn't need a leash on and they don't need a leash tight, or I got to use some sort of training lead, even a slip lead that goes on the dog's neck, or even a flat collar with a leash attached, where when I attach it to the dog's neck, they're going to be more likely to turn towards me and change directions. So just to go over what we've talked about, okay? People are bringing us dogs constantly that are reactive and they're doing crazy stuff. They've done it a lot of times on the harness, okay? And the owner has taken them out over and over again around the distraction on the harness. And the dog is now associating that behavior with the harness being on them. And the harness, it's not capable of delivering information to the dog in a way that's going to help them understand what you're trying to tell them with the harness when you're pulling on it. So above and beyond putting your harness on a long leash, on a flexible lead, even on a short leash, and letting the dog get to the end of the lead and realize that that's the end of the leash, or just allowing the dog to do what they want to do on the harness and accepting, like, I don't have the ability to stop the dog. Like, he's going to do what he's going to do, and I'm just going to let him do what he wants to do. I'm not going to try to stop him on the harness. I'm going to realize when I'm seeing him struggle, we're at the limit of how far we can go with the harness on in terms of the distractions that we're going to bring the dog around. So it's not that the harness is bad. The harness is great. It's great for taking a dog out and, you know, not risking them damaging their throat if they lunge, if they get reactive, and kind of determining, hey, how distracted is the dog? How serious is this behavior? Am I able to get the dog focused on a toy or focused on treats? And if I'm not able to do that, well, you know, and honestly, every dog should be trained to understand that there's a leash, it tightens, you turn, you look up at me. Now, people are going to say, but what about the harness that connects in the front, Eric? What about that harness? Folks, if someone just has to use that harness and they're going to say they're not going to use anything else other than a harness that connects in the front, I would say, hey, that's better than a harness connecting on the shoulder blades. Because some dogs, sure, they will understand the harness. It is physically pulling them, and it's putting pressure on their arm, and they're feeling, oh man, my arm's getting pulled this way, and they're more likely to turn. But these harnesses that connect to the top in the middle of the back, folks, they're not for stopping behaviors. They're gonna more than likely confuse the animal if you take them around crazy distractions. So remember, as always, folks, we don't blame them, we train them. Check out our next video we're gonna do with him, talking about introducing the slip lead and how we do teach this young dog to turn towards us and to change direction when he feels the leash tighten and he wants to get something. And how do we do that in a way that makes the dog enthusiastic, makes the dog really excited to listen to us, and not in a way where we're forcing them and the dog's going, oh my God, he's choking me. But no, we're just we're training the dog. So until next time, folks, we'll see you then. Take care.